And we are live. So, hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So, in today's topic, we will be analyzing Piers Morgan's interview with JustPearlyThings on why women should not be allowed to vote. Is she right? Is she wrong? My natural instinct to things like this is to simply dismiss it or dismiss her. But I want to be charitable and hold my judgment and hear what she has to say before I pass my verdict on our arguments. But before that, if you're watching and you'd like to support this channel, consider becoming a channel member or subscribing to Critical African Thinkers on Patreon. You can also get my crime fiction novel, which features an interesting debate on race and colonialism. God damn, what can I talk? So the link is in the description, or you can simply just like, share, subscribe, and put on your notification for this channel. So that's the conversation. That's an interesting conversation we're going to be having today. I'm going to be sharing a video on the interview that she did with Piers Morgan, and we're just going to go through it. But I can see that no one is here yet. So I'm going to wait for people to start coming in and then we can have this talk, have this conversation. All right. So, uh, welcome, guys. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the conversation. Uh, yeah. So, so I'll just begin. And I believe that others can catch up with the show later on. And if you have anything that you want to share with the show, I'll put the link in the description later on so we can have a conversation. So, who exactly is Just Pearly Things? I mean, she's been around on the internet. She's been shared so much on the internet this past few days on YouTube, on Twitter, mostly, right? Well, her real name is Hannah Pearl Davis, and she's a 27-year-old American YouTuber, podcaster, and social media influencer. And she has a big following on YouTube. She has about 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube, and currently she's the poster girl for the Red Pill Manosphere community. She is the red pill queen, if you might want to say so, and she's become popular for saying some very wild things about women. And her latest claim is that women shouldn't have the right to vote. As a result of that, she was recently invited to Piers Morgan to defend her position that women shouldn't vote, because that's how you get on Piers Morgan's show. You just do or say some wild stuff, and you'll be invited to the show. So today we are going to be reviewing our exchange with Piers Morgan, and part of our argument is that men provide more value to society than women. For example, the infrastructure that is needed to keep society running is mostly managed by men, like the oil rigs, the electricity grid, the fire service, the military, the police, etc. By that metric, she believes that men are more valuable, hence should have the right to vote, why women should not. She also argues that if women wanted to have that right to vote, then they better start being as valuable as men in those same areas. Now, I will address these arguments later on, but I wanted to tie this to a conversation we had on this channel like last year with Luis Razo Bravo, which Mark drew my attention to. Luis Razo Bravo felt that people should not have equal votes because people, in his estimation, are not equal and people do not provide equal value to society. He argued that the current one man, one vote system is a quasi communist system that assumes everyone is equal. And he wants the political system to be optimized to give more political rights to those who provide the most value to society. Now, after thinking through his theory, it made some sense to me, right? For example, if those who provide more substantive value to society have the most political power, I believe society would progress better and faster than in a situation where people with less contribution have an equal say in the political process. But this proposal runs into problems when selecting the metrics for what is most valuable to society. How exactly do you determine what metric is the most objective to ascribe value to people? Now, back to just pretty things. In a sense, if women stopped voting in the US today, I believe that the Republicans may never lose another general election, as women tend to vote more liberal and Democrats, while men tend to vote more conservatively and Republican. Some people might see this as a positive thing. And in fact, the me of a few months ago would have seen it as a positive thing. I would have loved to see a forever Republican victory, right? But because the party aligns more with my values, well, that's precisely the problem with such a proposal. It will lead to a monopoly of political thought and power. Society would stagnate. I mean, like yin and yang, progressives are needed as much as conservatives to have a functional and dynamic society. And if a society is too conservative, it stagnates. If it's too progressive, it leads to chaos, at least according to Jordan Peterson. So, this is precisely why women's vote is needed to create that balance. I mean, most things in nature exist in a balance of two opposing but equal forces: light and dark, up and down, right and left, male and female. I think these forces counterbalance each other because they're equal, and that's why life exists. If this balance is thrown off, life ceases to exist. So I think it's a ridiculous proposition to say that women shouldn't have the right to vote. But I will explain my thought process during my commentary on this video. So that's just my introduction to, yeah, why it matters. I'm fine. How you doing? Welcome. Welcome to the show. Yes, I believe you have some, yeah, I believe you have some some thoughts to add to this. So I just play the video. I'll just play the video and react to it as I play it, and maybe you can yeah. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Wow. Yep. Please tell me if you can hear. Just if you can't hear, let me know as well. So yep. So this is it. Please let me know if you heard that. Oh, no sound. Oh, damn. Damn, no sound. I knew this was going to happen. No sound, no sound, no sound, no sound. Oh, no sound, no sound, no sound. This is going to be one hell of a show. How do I do this? No sound. Stop sharing. Good Lord, good Lord, good Lord, good Lord. Mm, 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 mm. Chrome is not working, so I couldn't share from. Mm, Eesh. Oh, this is going to be a tough one. I don't know how I'm going to do this. So, okay, basically, what she was saying, if at all, what she was saying was that many people think she's crazy because she doesn't want women to vote. And she listed out a list, she wrote out a list of things why she thinks women should not vote. I mean, I can see why people think she's crazy, right? She said, oh, women, a lot of women have abortions. She's saying a lot of women are not virgins when they get married. No, she was just listing off a list of things, a list of behavioral things that are bad for women, or bad things that women do. There are a list of bad behavioral things that women do, and she's saying that's the basis for her saying women should not vote. And I look at that and I say, well, you could also make a list of things that men are bad at. And you can use that criteria and say that men should not have the right to vote as well. I mean, 80% of those who are convicted as criminals in the US are men. 98% of convicted rape, how do you call them, sexual offenders are men. In the educational system, men are falling far behind. So you have more educated women than men. Men are most likely to, you know, take part in some unnecessarily risky behavior. So you begin to ask yourself, if it's based on these negative qualities alone, that's why you're disqualifying women. There's a whole lot of negative qualities that as well that you can disqualify men for. There's a wide range of them. So why are you picking that which is peculiar to women and just saying, oh, women shouldn't have the right to vote because of this? It doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't know how we're going to do this because, oh, so maybe I'll just, good Lord. This is, oh, so the Clue channel is saying that the quality experiment is a failure. We need to go back to patriarchy. Maybe I should just open up the stream and we'll have this conversation instead. Why you think we need to go back to patriarchy? Because I can't obviously share my screen with the sound. So let's just talk. I think I have some points to counter that, but I see there are some people who want us to return back to the patriarchy. So the Clue channel, why it matters, you can call in. Let's hash this out. Let's talk about this. Let's let's have a conversation about this. I don't think that women's rights should be the women's right to vote should be taken away. If you say that the equality experiment, what in the first place, what exactly do you mean by equality? Because she made this statement, she kept making the statement that yeah, men and women are not equal, and she kept confusing sameness with equality. W- When you say equality, what exactly do you mean when you say equality, right? Because men are doing some of the hard work, like being in the oil rigs. Men are the ones maintaining certain infrastructure. Also, you want women to be able to do that as well. If women cannot do that, therefore they are not equal. But that's not how it works. People, both sexes are sort of optimized for certain roles or for certain jobs. That doesn't mean one is superior or the other is inferior. Take, for example, women are the ones who give birth. They are the ones who literally give birth to people. Without women giving birth to people, there'd be no one on earth. There'll be no one on earth. So I can use that metrics and say, well, because men cannot give birth, therefore men are not equal to women. Therefore, men are inferior to women. There are a whole lot of other things that women can do that men cannot do. So I think where they make the mistake is that they think that sameness, they think sameness. She's confusing sameness for equality. Of course, men and women are not the same. So how exactly do you expect them to be able to do exactly the same things? Equality does not derive from sameness. Equality derives from the worth of a human being. Your equality does not stem from, oh, you being able to do a certain task. It doesn't stem from you being able to contribute to society. It doesn't stem from any of that. It stems from your worth as a human being. It's not hinged on any other thing at all, other than the fact that you are a human being. If we want to go by the literal definition of equality, there is no equality in any sense because people have different skill sets, people have different talents, different abilities, different levels of education. There is no two-person that has these characteristics exactly the same way. So if you're going to be defining equality by those literal characteristics, you're going to run into problems. But the way I see equality, I see it as the value, your value, your worth, your dignity as a human being. That's what makes you equal, not you being able to do certain things. Now she made the statement that, well, if women want to be treated equally, then they should do things just as equally as men. They should go join the oil rigs. They should be drafted into the military. They should do the dangerous jobs. And I was okay. Well, not all men do that. Does she know that not all men work dangerous jobs? Not all men work in oil rigs. Not all men are in the military, giving their lives for their country. So what happens to those men who just, push paper around? In fact, most men today do not even do dangerous jobs. So should those men have the same right to vote as the men who do the dangerous job, if that's her metric for value? If that's her metric for saying, oh, for this person to be able to vote, they should be for this person to be able to vote, to have the right to vote because they are producing value, they are adding value by doing dangerous jobs. Now, the reason why men are even able to be the ones to maintain the infrastructure, to go out there to be able to do all that, is because there is a certain part of human existence that they are not burdened with, that the women have taken care of. The family, for example, if men had to be the ones taking care, giving birth to the children, nursing the children, raising the children, worrying about what they're going to eat, how they're going to be clothed, keeping the home neat and tidy. If men had to worry about all that, do you think they'd have time to be the ones maintaining infrastructure, I should say? So why is maintaining infrastructure? Why is that the basis, the metric for providing value to society? The other part of existence, the other part of life is just as equally important as maintaining the infrastructure, keeping the infrastructure running. Because I can tell you for a fact that if all the women decide to stop giving birth today, in about 80 years, there'd be no one to even run said infrastructure. There'd be no one. So I think that she's just discounting the value that women provide. Of course, it cannot be the same, but it doesn't mean it is not equally valuable. It doesn't mean it is not equally needed, that it is not necessary. Those things are necessary, those things are needed. So, to me, her point, you know, she talked about, oh, that women, in the time of old, most women were virgins, and now most women are not virgins when they're getting married. How does that even correlate with voting? Why does that matter in a woman's ability to vote? So when I did some research for this video, I found out that in the US, about 1 in 30 women are virgins when they get married. 1 in 30. I'm willing to bet that if you take the same statistics for men, you're going to find a lower number. And besides, who are these women having sex with? And obviously, they're not having sex with just themselves. So why is it the woman's responsibility? Why is it the woman's responsibility? The Clue Channel, you said, have elected officials gotten better since women's suffrage? How is it? Why is this burden placed on women? Why do you think that them not getting better is the fault of women? I don't understand that reasoning. What's the maybe you can expatiate more, maybe you can tell me what you mean by that. What exactly were you thinking was going to happen when women start voting? It's not getting better, so automatically it has to be because the women are not voting well. Most of the people elected into offices to begin with are men. So if the government is fucked up, right, then it's still the men's fault because they are the ones holding power, position of authority. Okay, so you said you didn't say that, so maybe you can be more explicit. But you said, have elected officials gotten better since women's suffrage? And I interpreted that to mean that you meant that women shouldn't vote because yeah. So I don't know. All those arguments are just weird arguments to me. They're really, really, really weird arguments to me. She said something about reading a book and finding out that only 5% of women wanted to vote. Now, she did not specify the time period where that, she didn't specify the time period where that book was written, where only 5% of women wanted to vote. I probably in the 1800s, or probably be in the early 1900s. But the fact that 5% of women, only 5% of women wanted to vote, doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that, oh, so take, in fact, if that's the case, then you don't have to worry about women voting. You don't have to worry about them having the right to vote. If what she was saying is correct, then today what we will get is that only 5% of women will be voting. But the realities are starkly different. The realities are starkly different. Now, I just looked at some stats and it showed me that, so women have registered and voted at higher rates than men in every presidential election since 1980, with the turnout gap between men and women growing slightly larger with each successive presidential election. Women who constitute more than half the population have cast almost 10 million more votes than men in recent elections. Well, that there goes the theory that, oh, women, there goes the theory that only 5% of women want to vote. Because as we have seen, if more women are even engaged in the political process than men. So if that's, leave it up to the women to choose not to vote, but to say that, oh, they shouldn't vote because 100 or 200 years ago only 5% of women wanted to vote. And then she gave the excuse of, oh, the first female millionaire was in the 18 something, that women always had the rights to work, women always had the right to be anything they wanted to be, which is just a flat out lie. And then what she does is she will bring in these exceptions as though they make the rule. Oh, there was one woman who was a millionaire in the 1800s, therefore women could be millionaires then, forgetting that that is an exception and there were legal and cultural barriers to women getting into the workforce. There were actual barriers for women into the workforce. It's just like saying, because, oh, there were some free blacks in the north then in America, um, those blacks who were slaves in the south, it was a choice. They could have been freed, but they chose to be slaves. So it means those women who were not working, they chose to not work. They could have worked, but they choose to not work. Then all of a sudden they decide to say, oh, we want to have the right to work. Why? Why all of a sudden do women have that desire to work? So I just, okay, the Clue channel says that it means that most women didn't ask to vote. Well, okay, good. They didn't ask to vote, but now they have the right to vote. They can exercise their right to not vote. They can exercise their right to not vote. But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that they're actually participating more in the political process. White Matter says that it's funny how she provided exceptions to prove a narrative, yet when someone else does the same thing to counter her argument about abortion, divorce, she screams exception. That's that's the crazy thing. These people like this, they just cherry pick data. They just pick data that confirms their narrative and then run with it. You know, they just run with data that it's so simplistic. When you look at these things on surface value, it seems that it makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense. If men should have the right to vote because men are the ones managing the quote unquote infrastructure, then those men who are not directly involved in managing infrastructure, those who are pushing papers in the offices, they shouldn't vote anyway. They shouldn't have the right to vote because they're just like women. Those men who are not in the military shouldn't have the right to vote as well. By her metric, disabled people shouldn't have the right to vote because they're not giving anything physically. So she just boils down rights to physical ability, or because men can physically and the funny thing is, these are the same people that will keep telling you that, oh, men and women are not the same. Of course they are not the same. So if they are not the same, how exactly do you expect them to do the same things, to be able to do the same things? I think that both sexes are optimized for the roles that they perform. I mean, if I wanted to use myself as an example, I wake up Mondays to Fridays, I wake up very early to go to work. It's stressful for me. I drive in the traffic, I get to work, right? But I do that. I'm not complaining. I have to do that. It's not very convenient for me, but I have to do that. It's the sacrifice I'm making for my family, right? But there are other parts that my wife plays as well. So at times I wake up in the night and she's not sleeping because she's trying to make sure that the baby sleeps well, that I sleep well. And for the life of me, she's been doing that for more than 2 years. I I would literally go mad if I had to do that for a couple of nights. I mean, I would lose my mind if I don't get I get to sleep very well at night while the baby is crying and she's attending to the baby, right? I don't know how she does it, but that is just as important as me going out to provide for the family. That's just as important. So will I now say that my wife's contribution is not as valuable, is not as equally valuable because she's not the one going out every day, you know, to work and all that. But I say that. What if she wasn't there and I had to take care of the baby all by myself? Would I be as productive? I don't think so. So I think men and women's contributions are not the same, but they are equally important. They are as equally important as the other. You know, so, so this kind of one-dimensional thinking by people in the red pill community, to me, is just simply idiotic because they just reduce people to stats. Life is much more nuanced and complex than stats. You definitely different. Life is much more nuanced than stats. Than so why is she picking those criteria as the criteria for value? She could have picked any other criteria. She could have picked any other criteria. So the clue channel, you said both roles are valuable. Of course they are, but not according to Pearl. She thinks that women are not providing equal value, so they shouldn't have the right to vote. They shouldn't have the right to vote because they're not. Um, so what is White Mother says, okay, good. Stanley says that's a tricky question because Jim Crow full voting rights were not granted for blacks till 1965. White Mother says Stanley understood. I'm just making a point that if people think women's voting rights have caused things to go worse, the same thing can be applied to exactly. So yes, so if people think that women's voting rights have caused things to get worse, the same thing can be applied to black people and say, black people having, you know, more voting rights have caused things to get worse. And both are false. So this very silly idea, looking for looking for that's in fact it's a very woke idea to say, oh, if you don't do exactly the same thing, then you are not providing exactly the same value. They are not equal, you're not valuable. Sameness is different from equality. There is literally nothing in this life that is the same. No, even twins, no two people are the same. No two people have the same capabilities, abilities, just name it. So why would you reduce equality to sameness? Why would you? It's just like when women complain that, oh, that the work that they do in the house is menial job and all that. No, it's not. That's meaningful work. That's what's needed to keep society functioning. That's part of what is needed to keep society functioning. And if women are not doing their part, society would break down, like totally break down. It's like the concept of yin and yang, right? It's a counterbalancing force. Most of life is in binaries. There's light and dark, there is up and down, there's male and female. And in a way, these are the things that makes life balanced. They are opposing but equal forces that just keeps life in equilibrium, keeps life in the balance. But if you want to distort that, if you want to say, oh, one is more important than the other, you're just going to throw everything into chaos. You're just going to throw everything into chaos. So if you the link is in the chat now. If you want to call in, let's have a conversation. So earlier, before more people came in, I was talking about um the fact that, you know, when you look at the contribution that men and women, bring to what they bring to the table, talking about political rights. Also, um, I talked about Luis Razo Bravo, who we had a conversation with last year, right? We talked about how he talked about how the one man one voting system is a quasi communist system, in the sense that um, everyone is not equal, so everyone shouldn't have the same right to vote. That people should be given the right to vote based on the value that they bring. And then I ask myself, well, how exactly do you go about measuring that value to say this is more valuable as a metric? So those who provide this, they are more valuable to vote in the political system. It doesn't make any sense. Well, I think I've ranted enough. Wolf, White Matters, welcome to the conversation. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad, Charles. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. White Matters, how
Man,
you doing?
Charles, I got a lot to say about this.
Oh, good, 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 good. White Matters, let's
So,
hear you.
okay, so two things. So I'm gonna Stanley's on point with what he said. The problem was this: when what year was it that women got the right to vote? Was it in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken?
Probably. Let me check.
Okay, I think it was in the 40s, but somebody can fact check me on that. And what happened from there, Charles, is that the original version of feminism gave women two choices, right? They could either go out, pursue a career, or they could stay and be housewives because that was the role that they used to have before they were in the workplace. The version of feminism today has changed to where now housewives are shamed and seen as holding women down. And it's not the same as what it used to be, where, I agree, women should have the choice, do what you want to do within reason. Now, you have this thing, Charles. What's happening with women like Pearl is that they know that there's red pill men out here, the crazy ones that are just over the top insane, and she can tailor her content to what they want to hear, and she can make a good amount of money doing so. It's kind of, in a sense, women selling out themselves to make a lot of money.
Hmm. Yep, yep. White Matters, let's hear you.
Yeah, no, big up to everyone on the chat and everyone on the panel. But no, I agree with what Wolf just said there. Everything. Pearl is definitely pandering to an audience who is way, way extreme in regards to their views. My view is this: if you're a law-abiding citizen, you pay taxes, you should be able to vote. Um, that's how I see things. I don't really. I think the first wave of feminism was about women's choice, whether you want to be a stay-at-home mother, wife, or if you wanted to work in the workplace. That's not a problem at all. So I don't see that as being a problem at all. I will say this though: it's just coming from Pearl, it's so hypocritical because that means she's advocating for her own rights to be taken away from her. Now, she
Hmm.
is the definition of a career modern day woman. She has her own broadcast studio, she hires people, yet she's trying to strip all of those rights away from the sounds of it in terms of everything. So I don't get that at all, but she's essentially going against herself. But yeah, I just disagree with everything that she's saying at the moment on
It's
this
Well,
one.
now,
massive contradiction. So,
and
Wolf,
Charles, there's
sorry. I
a
think
there's a caveat.
what
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My fault. I was lagging. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we should just take it, let everyone say their piece and we'll come right back again. So, sorry, Wolf, before you get back to you, let Ellery, Stanley, and Freezone have their piece. So, Ellery, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks. Thanks. In regards to what's her name, Pearl.
Yep,
That video, she didn't really provide the sources for her claim. She made a claim that
exactly.
because women have the right to vote, it has led internationally to an increase in divorce rates and abortion. And
Yeah.
listening to the whole thing, she didn't provide a source that actually confirms how women having the vote correlates to increased divorce rates and abortion rates internationally, because women all over most of the world have the right to vote now. So I didn't see that evidence. The other thing that was mentioned, I think White Lives mentioned it. But I'm just reiterating it. She basically is the epitome of the modern independent woman, as was mentioned. I mean, she runs her own business. She's not married. She doesn't have any kids. She makes her own decisions. She doesn't need to be submissive or, for someone to tell her what to do. Ironically, 100 years ago, or maybe 200 years ago, when women didn't have the vote, at her age, her father would have married her off. She wouldn't really have had the choice to decide who she was going to marry, because she's part of the 1%, right? She says that she's part of this rich family or whatever. It's mainly a patriarchal decision. The father would have liaised with the father of another family and told her, you're marrying this guy, and that would have been it. She would have been married, kids, definitely. I think she's 26. So I don't know. It's kind of 27. So there's a lot of contradictions in to me, it's simple. Just practice what you preach. And I don't really think she's practicing what she's preaching, basically. That's all I'm saying.
Good. Stanley.
Hey there. Hey everyone. I was gonna say I could see how women voting might lead to more abortions, because women are gonna, vote for that sort of thing. But I don't see the divorce part. So I didn't watch her show. I know who she is. I've never really watched a full show of hers. And my question is basically, why are people like her so influential? She just doesn't seem like someone that would be a role model.
Great question.
All right, free zone.
I mean, I can answer that question, and the way that, and what's good, everybody? What's good, man? Salute to you, Charles, and the panel. As Wolf said, man, it's a grift, and the reason why she's able to get it off is because she knows what we all know. She's not really arguing against her own position, because we all know that her position, no matter how much she fights, what she's arguing for is not going to change. So she can say that women shouldn't be able to vote, and women shouldn't be able to do this and women shouldn't be able to do that. But the reality of it is that none of that stuff is actually going to happen, no matter how much she fights for it. So she loses nothing by saying any of it, because none of that stuff that she's saying is actually going to happen. So she's getting, she's a bag chaser. And shout out to her. You know what I'm saying? If you can if you can say these types of things and get the bag off of it, more power to you. I ain't got no problem with it. I just know I know where my money's not going. So that's my take.
Help me out with
damn,
this.
maybe
Sorry,
I ought to.
let's go back to Wolf. So
Sorry.
Yeah, no, free zone. He's correct, and basically, she's pulling the "I'm a strong, independent woman who don't need a man" right under these dudes' noses. They don't even see it. That's how blind they are, Charles. And the only thing she said that may be a little bit true is that I believe in America more women do vote than men, but we can't argue that as well, because men voted for hundreds of years in America before women could vote, and there was a lot of terrible policies there. So her argument there is a little bit of a fallacy.
why it matters?
No, I was just going to ask Free Zone, and it's to the panel. Why is JustPearlyThings so influential? Because he regurgitates everything that other Red Pill content creators have stated. It's not as if she even sounds convincing. And every single time she's on a debate, from what I've seen, she looks like she always loses any debate that she tries to put forward. Even this Piers Morgan bit, she came across badly, at least to me. I just want to know, how is she still so influential? I still don't get it.
Well, there's two sides of it. Number one, the one side of it is from the top down. So that answer is, I believe that she's already bought and paid for. Now, from the bottom up, why people like someone like a Pearl is it's the package of it, right? It's different when a good-looking woman is pandering to a crowd, right? If she was a 10 or a 9 saying red pill, no. I mean, like, to the upper echelon, one of the finest women on the earth, right? If she was a exceptionally good looking chick talking what she's talking, there's plausible reasoning to say, I don't know how to really describe it, but it wouldn't be as receptive as a bland looking chick who is saying the same thing.
You think so?
It's it.
I
Yeah,
thought
it's
the
it.
opposite, because a bland woman has to get the buy-in from men this way, because she can't do it through what men in her niche want, which is beauty. So I for me, it's always like, I don't know.
And you know what? I thought the same thing too when this came out, because I asked that same question, and I think this is what I came up with. I think that Pearl is Pearl is an avatar for a more people can get anybody can pull a Pearl. Let's be real. Anybody can pull a chick that looks like Pearl. She's a regular chick. I would say regular chick, like she's 4 or 5, whatever. She blends in with the rest of society. So from a man's perspective, when they hear a chick that looks regular, that looks like any chick off the street saying what they want to hear, it makes it feel more relatable, because that whoever that person is may feel that they could get a chick that looks like Pearl, because anybody could. So I think that's what it is. Whereas like if a chick is really hot, that's you. A person who's below may feel that they can't reach that, but they could reach a Pearl.
Larry.
Oh, sorry. Yep, I have no idea why she's popular. It seems to be trending, this type of politics. If it's not Andrew Tate, it's Just Pearl, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. Lapeef Network and another one. This is Anton. It's just trending. It seems popular. That's the politics of the day. You know, somehow you look at problems with society and you blame it on women, or you blame it on the left, blame it on liberals. It's just trending. I don't know why, so I can't give you an answer why. Sorry.
Stanley.
I was going to say maybe she's doing this because she can't cook and couldn't pull off a cooking show.
Probably.
Wolf.
Well, and my question is this: if she's so good at, portraying the message, why is she still single?
Yeah, well, you know how
What's the expression? Those that can do, those that can't teach. Isn't that what it says?
yeah, so those
Something like
can
that.
teach. It's very funny. It's very funny that, to me, people like this, they actually don't last. They just come, they do the shock thing. They're like shock jocks. They do their shock thing and then they fade away. There was a time Milo Yiannopoulos was the one making all the waves with all the shocking things he was saying, and even now Andrew Tate is fading away, and the half life for people like this in the industry or in the internet space is so small. At a time, people will get tired of basically the same thing that you're saying, and they'll just move on, move off from what they're saying. And the first time I noticed this girl was dumb was when there was a video of her going to a campus where she was basically doing those interview things with students. And she met one Jewish student who just totally deconstructed her. I'll find that video and try to react to it. The point that guy made was he just finished her there. That was the point. I was like, this girl doesn't even really know what she's talking about. She's just spewing out these talking points. They are basic talking points that she knows, are popular with the red pill community. She would just regurgitate them. And because it's coming from a girl, yeah, people will just lap it up. But what really blows my mind is that they have this insane amount of following. So are people that stupid? Are people really that stupid?
Yes, I think people. I think because this is all entertainment, right? Because I think people are just more into entertain. Like they're more framed by entertainment. Well, no, I don't want to say that. The way entertainment is, it frames people who watch it in a different way than say when we grew up. That's my take on it. Like I think that she's an avatar for the average, and if you pull any average person off the street, they'll be no different than her. Like
Mm,
I don't think she's exceptionally. She's about as smart as the average person walking around. Let's say.
mm.
Holy cow.
So anybody who's average can relate to her because she's average.
So I wanted to get to this question of equality. When people say equality, what exactly do they mean? I will need everyone's thoughts. When you hear the word equality, what comes to your mind when you say, "Oh, men and women are equal," or "Men and women shouldn't be equal"? What comes to your mind? We'll start with Wolf.
Charles, let me go last because I got to think on that for a second.
All right. So who wants to start?
I'll kick it off. Um, oh, somebody else? No, I'll
Yeah,
kick it off.
Freedom, go. Yeah.
I I look at it as equal. The equal that I think of is the equal of opportunity as the superseding equal to me, in my opinion. The ability to have the opportunity to be whoever you want to be, and at the same time reap the consequences of whatever opportunity you take on.
Mm. All right. Stanley.
I was just going to say, I always look at it as equality under the law. Though I do like the equality of opportunity thing, but the caveat is that no one can be what they want to be. You can only be what you're capable of being.
Mm. Interesting.
And the two might coincide, the two might not coincide.
Mm. Larry.
To me, it just means equality under the law. So if a man has the right to own property, then woman has the right to own property. It's like law. The law works for the genders. You know, no one's going to be treated like a second class citizen under the law. So that's what equality means to me. Equality under the law.
White matters.
Yeah, I echo what everyone's been saying. Equality under the law and opportunity. Anything else, we can't be equal. No one can be equal. Two men aren't even equal. One could be better at sports and one could be not as good at sports. But in terms of equal treatment under the law, equal opportunity to access these things, yeah. But in terms of equal like outcome and things like that, no, because no two people are the same.
Mm. Wolf.
I mean, I think just go back to the original definition of feminism, and you know, because feminism has become more about women's rights than men's. And the problem is that, every time you bring an argument up to women, they'll try to say, well, that's not as big of a deal. Feminism was about equality for both sexes, not just women. And today it's more about women's rights and do everything you can to destroy the man in the process. It should be about protecting both people and not giving favoritism in society or under the law like they do currently. I mean, the odds of a man getting his children and a divorce is slim compared to the woman, even if he has the money to take care of said child. And I don't think that's right.
Mm. So yeah, I think that, of course we can agree, and that this is the thing with life. Life is complex, life is nuanced, life is not a straight jacket, right? Of course there are certain privileges that women enjoy by virtue of them being women. I think there are, and there are also privileges that men enjoy by virtue of them being men, because they're men. They're not exactly the same thing. If we're looking for a situation where it is, totally the same, it's never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. Now for me, if I want to define equality, I will come from the angle of, right, equality is by the virtue of you being a human being, not based on any other thing. It's not based on any other thing. It's just on the fact that you are a human being. You should have equal opportunities in theory, right? And you should be treated equally under the law. So there should be no discrimination against you under the law based on any feature, based on any characteristic, whether you're disabled, whether you're, what have you. And this brings me to the point that she kept making about um, because men do the hard labor. Because why does she put so much value in physical labor? I mean, in my mind, I think basically the differences between the capacities of men and women boils down to biology, boils down to what men are physically capable of doing, or being much stronger, being much faster, being much agile, right? Well, for women, it still boils down to biology. Women are able to give birth, men cannot do that. So, aside that, I'm struggling to see the the differences that are so telling. Aside from those two sort of things, does anyone have anything to you know categorically say that men and women are so different based on these things?
Well, I was disabused of that notion, the day my son was born. They wouldn't let me wait out in the waiting room with a cigar. So I was like, oh my God, new respect for a woman, because I'm like, I couldn't do that. Thank goodness.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
just being able to go through the birthing process successfully, um, I think it was amazing. Um, you know, I think that that made us very equal. I was the only one working, but you know what? She deserved it after that.
Hmm. Free zone.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame it because I don't totally agree with her point. I just disagree with the conclusion that she comes up with.
Mhm. So you
For
don't totally
example,
disagree with her point.
well, no, no, no. One of the biggest problems with the male space that I see when we talk about this kind of thing is that oh my bad. There's there's people
Oh,
Oh, he cut out.
cut out. Yeah, both go.
I mean, in 2023, you know, I mean, we can look at the labor market. 90% of the jobs that keep the structure going, electricians, plumbers, all that are men. That's not normally something women go into. Women prefer, roles like nursing, more, relaxed jobs in terms of physical labor. But that doesn't mean that those men should become more valued because they keep the infrastructure. However, I think, there's a small group of women that think that men are just not biologically stronger than women. And I just think that that's something that needs to be made clear, that clearly men are stronger. This is not an argument. 9 out of 10 times, a woman is not going to beat a man in a fight. We know this, and that should be established. But other than that, I think given the right resources, I mean, there's brilliant women out here that can do things. It's just that you don't see women taking the same role that men normally take in terms of physical labor. That's more of something that men do. I think women lean more towards creativity, and men lean more towards like leadership and infrastructure.
One of the
Yeah.
things which I find to be a complete contradiction in this argument that gets made by not just Pearl but by so many red pillars is, on one hand, they want women to be feminine,
Mm.
but yet they're trying to use, well, you don't go into traditional, I know it's traditional masculine roles like bricklaying and all the structures. I'm like, well, hold on. If you want your woman to be feminine, I don't know. I know this might sound a bit old school, but if I hear a woman saying that she's a bricklayer or a roofer or something like that, I'm like, okay, it's not necessarily the most feminine role I'm thinking in my head. Why would a woman choose that role if she's in a feminine? Why would a woman want to get herself so dirty by being on the oil rigs if she's, I'm not saying they don't, I'm not saying there aren't women who do that, but on the whole, I don't think a woman's natural instinct would be to do those things because of her limitations physically. And also, I don't think women are naturally geared towards that. We just select different roles. Like men are more geared towards STEM and roles that more suit analytical part of the brain, where women are more about the probably emotional side of things, the caring, the
Mhm.
nurturing. So I'm just like, it's always like a contradiction. Try and catch them out. Say you don't do these roles, yeah, but you want a woman to be a woman in a feminine, right?
Mm.
So I will see that for me, how I see it as a bit of a funny contradiction of how they
It,
frame everything.
it it's a very big contradiction that I've noticed, because on the one hand, they'll say, oh, for example, they'll say, well, what does a woman bring to the table? They'll ask women, what do you bring to the table apart from sex and your beauty, right? But when they find a woman who brings something other than that, they'll tell the woman, well, I don't need your money. I can take care of you. I just need your beauty and your submission. And I'm like, pick one. Which is it? You can't satisfy these people, right? On the one
It,
hand, they're complaining that, oh, women are loose, oh, men want decent women as virgins and all that. On the other hand, they are teaching men how to go out and pick loose women, how to defile women. And then she made the statistics of women not being virgins, and I keep asking myself, well, the women sleeping with themselves? Obviously not. It takes two to commit the act. So why is that burden on women? Why is that burden of, oh, women are not virgins? They're not deflowering themselves. They're not having sex with themselves. At least most women aren't. So it's a massive contradiction. And you're right, why it matters. Free zone, go ahead.
nah, I agree with him. I don't want no bricklayer chick. I got no. I'm good on that. Um, like I mean, I get the point, right? That the men create the infrastructure that makes the world float and be what it is, and yeah, I get all of that. I just don't agree with the conclusion that they come up with based on that information. Because, like you said, life is more nuanced than that, and that doesn't account for the nuances.
Not
Yep.
not just that though, but imagine a world where all the women weren't allowed in the workplace. You know how what would happen to the workforce? They'll say, "Oh, but all the major structures." But I'm trying to think of like Amazon Prime. I know women aren't the delivery drivers, but we have like a service. I don't know if it's the same way all of you are at, where we can get parcels delivered the same day. Now that needs people on the who also deliver the parcels, but people who on the operations who work on computers who are actually doing some other stuff to actually make sure that the orders come through, which I'm assuming women will be on call center staff. So a lot of our environment, society is geared towards 24/7 living. Hospitals, nurses, they're working obviously on 24/7 patterns and work in emergency wards. So even people talking about the structures, there's all the things in society that a modern
Exactly.
world kind of thrives and survives on. That if all women was just to one day come out the workplace, I don't think our society would be in the same way we see it today. Things were shut down earlier. Things won't be 24/7. There's so many other things that don't take into account because it's not, I don't know, the things that were mentioned in those arguments. So I don't think how I don't know how that would even work if women were to go back to this traditional role set. It's like we need the workers will need them as work. Otherwise, our society will be completely stripped bare, right to the bare bones, which I don't think people are going to want, in my opinion.
And that's you just hit the nail on the head, because even the so-called infrastructure that you're talking about, or men maintain the infrastructure, there are so many levels to these things. And besides, women are even much, in my opinion, women are very detail oriented. There are certain tasks that they are better at because they look at everything. They look at everything. Men are very narrow focused. So at times, there can be mistakes here and there, that a woman will catch. So instead of both sexes seeing themselves as competition, I think it should be complementary. I think the way God has designed it is that both sexes are optimized for the roles that they do, for the roles that they perform. They are optimized for it. Like I made the example earlier that if I had to wake up every night to take care of my crying daughter, I would literally go mad. But that's what my wife's been doing for 2 years, and she's still saying. And I'm asking myself, how does she do it? How did my mom do it? So it's, they're optimized, both sexes are optimized for what they do. And it's complementary. I don't see a reason why it has to be antagonistic.
I always thought that the better question was, should men and women be able to work together? And that's not so straightforward as a straight yes or no. Because it's different from, like, if you had a department within the company where men worked on one side and women worked on the other and they were separated, that's a different conversation, because now you're talking about productivity. You're talking about, especially with this Me Too stuff, like if you have them separate, you don't have that issue. Like things like that. And these are not necessarily that I'm full with it, but they're understandable arguments. But just to not have women in the workplace at all, I was never with that personally.
So Stanley, how would you answer Free Zone's question about when and women working together? Should men and
My
women be?
in civilian life, I don't see a problem with it. I work for a company where, there were women, IT people, etc. Um, I never had much of a chance. I was in the Navy so long ago. As a matter of fact, the day I left my last ship was the first day that women were reporting aboard. So I missed that lovely opportunity. I think it's harder. I think it gets easier the older you get. 16 and 17, I'm sorry, 17 and 18-year-olds working together, that can be a little problematic. But I think the older, you get, the more settled you are. Men and women working together isn't that difficult. But one quick point, and I always have to be the odd one out, but I honestly find this argument that women are purposefully going out and becoming anti-men. I just find that whole thought process just rigid. I think people who think that there are strict roles that women must fill and that men must fill are, number one, just the rigidity of thought is just, to me, stifling. You may be missing out on some good stuff. And number two, I just, my experience, it just doesn't reflect this whole women have to be submissive and all this stuff. That's just ridiculous. To me, it's all situational. And if you are always in a mode where, women have their role every day, every minute of every day, and men have their role every day, every minute of every day, that just sounds like a miserable existence.
Larry, thoughts on Free Zone's question about men and women working together? Okay, White matters.
You know what? I did think that to Free Zone's point, that actually is an interesting idea, because in schools, I know it's obviously different age groups, but I'm pretty sure, I've not got the stats or anything, but when they have all girls schools and all boys schools, I'm pretty sure there's the obvious issues that doesn't occur as much, which means you can be a lot more productive because you're not having to worry about the things which the other sex will cause issues with. So maybe that's an interesting point to have a trial where you would have seriously just almost segregated sexes when it comes to certain work, and see how that, if productivity goes up, it'll be difficult, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays through. I know kind of off another topic, but they did it with uniforms and how instead of everyone wearing what they wanted, everyone has a strict uniform. So it kind of made everyone in unison. I don't know if that will work at all in the same way, but yeah, it's interesting, to be honest with you.
How does women having the right to vote lead to an increase in STDs? I was just watching the video with her debate. She said 1 in 3 women has STDs or something like that. I was like, okay, what has that got to do with the right to vote?
They talked about abortion. They talked about divorce, and it was a similar reaction. I mean, how does that even correlate with voting? Like,
Oh, do you, do you, I can give you the answer from that side. I've been over there. I know what the answer is. What it is if men have all the rights to vote, the idea is that they'll vote to basically do things that restrict women's rights so that I mean basically that, yeah.
Has
No,
anyone
but
seen?
the STDs, how if men take away women's right to vote, will that lower STDs? Men will still want to have sex
They
with
think
women.
that a restriction on women's rights will cause them to have less be less nefarious or have sex with less men or something. I don't know how they come to that, but that's what they say.
but but people don't vote on who they have sex with. I mean, it's not a constitutional matter.
No, it's not. Absolutely not.
Has anyone seen the TV series? And it's even based off the film, the Handsmaid Tale. Sorry.
Yeah, so the movie and the series. Yeah.
For me, that's the perfect red pill scenario. If anyone's not seen it, I do implore you to watch it. That's what they want. That's what red pill is, in my opinion. That's what they want for women. A society where women don't have the right to vote, they don't have the right to read. Basically, they're there for childbearing. That is it. That is essentially the perfect red pill scenario.
I go further. I'd say they want the Abraham stuff. Abraham had more than one wife and he had concubines as well. That's what they want.
That too.
They want Old Testament. That's what they want.
Or they want the Middle East. Stanley, you wanted to respond something on the school. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I went to an all boys Catholic military school, and I think you could probably make a point that it helped with focusing on academics, but I was a little bit shy as a kid. I'm not. If I had it to do all over again, I wouldn't. I think co-ed education is better in the end. Having gone through it, I
Is
didn't
that because
find.
of social? You thought you
Yeah.
missed out on certain social environments. Okay, because I think there's not. So is the argument more? It's not necessarily productivity from a, how do I put this, purely functional perspective, but just purely from a social, how we can get better at interacting with women and then women interacting with men, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's purely social,
Okay.
and I think that's important. I think it's as important as academic.
Oh, I agree. I agree. It's just you can't put that in a nice stat and measure it. I don't think as much as you can say for productivity and other things. But yeah, I agree.
Wolf.
What was the question, Charles?
So we're just talking about the.
No, men
I
and
think the
women in the
last point was about
workplace.
schooling. Yeah, men and women at the workplace. Yeah. What do you think about
I
that?
don't have an issue with it. Obviously, there's going to be barriers when it comes to physical strength. I mean, we can look at, I brought this up before, like there's a literal video you can see on YouTube of this where men and women took the firefighter test and the women couldn't knock the door down. They tried like 7, 8 times. They couldn't do it. Every single dude, even the smallest dude, was able to do it. So you have an issue there because that could cost somebody their life. And women, fought for that, quota that they have to meet. That's why they hire these women. And that could be an issue in society if the person cannot get through the door. But if it's not a physical barrier and the women can do the job good, I don't see why it's a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, most jobs nowadays don't really require you to be that physical. So I really don't see any problem with men and women working together. And I think that just control yourself. If the problem is that there is going to be some sexual tension and the rest, people could just control themselves, and that will solve the problem with having to. Hey,
I
Steve.
wanted I
Hey,
wanted to. Oh, sorry.
go ahead
I
before
was
Steve.
gonna say, because they keep on mentioning what women can do and what men can't do. But I do distinctly remember in World War II, when most of the men were on the battlefield dying, there were a lot of jobs women then had to do at home that were usually reserved for men, working in factories with the munitions, working on the farms, because the labor force was very short, because, of course, most men were on the battlefield dying and fighting.
Mm,
So they did prove in a way that they could handle quite a lot of the stuff. They did it for the war effort. So so I don't know what it was like in America, but I know in the UK that they definitely started hiring women, well, bringing women in. It was part of the war effort to deal with that stuff, to deal with the jobs that men usually did, but because there weren't men around because of the war. So
mm, yeah. Steve, hey, so good to have you. Steve, welcome.
What's up?
Welcome to the
How's it
show,
going,
Steve.
Charles?
How you doing?
What's
I'm
good,
good.
Steve?
I'm good.
Sorry, my internet connection is really crap right now.
Yeah, so the floor is yours.
Look, man, I just barely woke up from a nap and I realized that you were live, so I came in here rushed, and I've only heard a little bit of the conversation. So you'd have to be more pointed at your question.
Yeah, so we're talking about just pearly things. Who wants women's right to vote to be taken away because she feels women these days are promiscuous. Women these days have high rates of STDs, abortions, divorce, and all that. So for that reason, and
Yeah.
also because men maintain the infrastructure like the electricity grid, oil rigs, the military, the police, fire service. So by that metrics, for her, women are not contributing equal value, and because of that, women shouldn't have the right to vote. So that's
Ah,
it in a nutshell.
that's a ridiculous and sexist statement for her to make. That's like saying because men do this, women don't deserve this. When, I mean, has she put any thought to what women do? It sounds like she's trying to restrict the rights of women because they don't do the same thing that men do, and that's inherently the thing that she says that she fights against. The kind of sexual inequality that she struggles against. So I think she doesn't know what she's talking about. I've heard her argument, and I've seen that discussion. I think it's ridiculous and ironic that she would say that.
Yeah, totally
Like,
agree. Totally
is
agree.
is is the only metric of value for women purely their vagina and what they can do for men? Because that's the argument that she's making, and I find it insulting to women.
Mm. I find it insulting that you want men and women to even be like literally the same for you to consider them as equal. Or because women are not they're not firefighters or they're not in the oil rig, so no, they can't be equal. They're not providing equal value. Doesn't make sense to me. Um,
Well, I'm sure the unintended consequence of her statement goes without saying, but she's trying to generalize an entire gender based on her shitty interpretation of some statistics. Like, good for her. I'm glad that she's speaking out for men. Everybody knows that I'm a men's rights advocate and activist, and I support that. But you can't do that at the cost of the other gender. Does that make sense? Like, you can't. One shouldn't kneel to make the other feel strong or to feel taller. Like, that's just a ridiculous expectation. It's like, no, despite what any person does, they still have the same basic human value as everyone else.
mhm.
Now, I would argue that the wealthy have more influence than the not wealthy. There's far more significant difference between those two. I don't have the money to purchase political sway in Congress. Like, I just don't have it. So to say that women have more or less, seeing that they fall into generally the same income bracket, they're poor and there's wealthier people, meaning I don't see her point being accurate at all. Like, nowhere near accurate at all.
seems she has no points. She's just regurgitating
Absolutely.
shallow red pill talking points. Just
It's shallow clickbait.
Yep. Yeah, Wolf. Then Stanley.
And Steve, I even think I would go a step farther. She's exactly what she says that she's speaking. I'll get it out against Steve. She's just doing it below the red pill guys' noses, and she's made a lot of money. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
call her a grifter, but I think that she knows what to say to get the money. And these guys agree with it because they're like, man, hell yeah, we got a woman over here telling women they ain't shit. Oh yeah. And it only emboldens these guys even more. And I don't think she's a good look for women. And I asked the question, Steve, if she's sitting here being this traditional woman and all this, where's her man at? She's been in multiple relationships and she ain't married. That's a problem.
Right. Yeah. What is she like in the relationship? Which is the part that she doesn't take into account, right? Like, I find her arguments very shallow and not very, I don't want to be rude, but not very intellectual. But I think you're right, Wolf. But I think you have to be very careful about character attacks like that, because it might be something else that we're not aware of. Maybe she has some kind of an issue physically that she can't be in a relationship with. I don't know, and I don't want to make that accusation on her. So I want to stick straight to her argument. But the part that I think you are hitting on that's valid is that she's coming from a very conservative perspective here, and not everybody's conservative. There's a lot of liberals, a lot of progressives out there that these arguments don't apply to.
Can I just sorry to interject? Is that a conservative viewpoint though?
No,
women not having right to vote. Is it not? Is it? I don't. Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying some of her other arguments are.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying specifically the right to vote. The right to vote is such an odd argument for me. The one that she makes is it's so difficult to argue, not from a factual standpoint, but from an absolutely idiotic argument standpoint. Like when you hear an argument that's just absolutely so idiotic, you are speechless. You just don't know how to argue against it. Yeah, it's just like that's just an absolutely vacuous argument that is filled with spurious data that she pulls from random sources that you're just like left stupefied is the best way to put it. But no, I'm speaking more towards, she has admitted that she is conservative, and we can't help but understand that is going to color her lenses a little bit. But there's other people out there, like I work with 2 lesbians who are hardworking people. They work their asses off, right? They are very knowledgeable in their field. They're very intelligent, very hardworking, right? I would consider them not conservative by definition. But let's just say that they're a little bit less than progressive, and they're more on the liberal side. Where do all these fit in for them? You know what I mean? I know some liberal women who don't sleep around and actually behave very conservative. It's just their views are not. So, who is she speaking to? Because it isn't me, a liberal male. Like, I don't want the things that she says that men should have. Like, I don't want that. Like, I disagree with the whole body count bullshit too.
That's
like, I disagree with the wholly.
You're a beta male. That's the reason why.
No, I'm not. If you did me, you would not say I was a beta male.
Oh, damn.
That's their argument. That's their argument.
Right. That's the argument.
Yeah.
But they would be. But see, that's the thing. Is like when someone doesn't have an argument against you, they always attack your character. So if they say it's because I'm a beta male, that's attacking my character. That's not an actual argument, which tells me that they don't have a point. They don't have. They don't know how to concede that they don't have a point. And so my point is, like, treating all women like they're beta females is not the answer, and treating them all like they're all alpha females is not the answer, and vice versa for men included in that. So, like, that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that her argument falls apart very, very quickly once you understand where she's coming from. So I think Wolf is on this, with the exception that I don't want to attack her character. I want to attack her argument.
Well, I go after the character a little bit because she's also kind of admitted before that she's kind of more of a MAGA conservative, so she's on that Trump train a little bit. And what I mean by that, like her followers, they would call you a simp, or they would say you're simping for the pussy because you can't get a woman. And that, you know, that's the stuff that her red pill followers would say about you.
They can say that
So,
all day long, but it doesn't make anything less true that I've said.
mm,
I don't really care if someone calls me a liberal cuck. I don't have a problem because it's how they view me without any data or information upon who I am is none of my business. Like, this is a them problem, not a me problem.
mm, exactly.
Yeah.
So even during that interaction with Piers Morgan, the other woman on the table was like, "Well, by your own metric, you shouldn't be in a marriage because you're not a virgin." And one of the things you've been rallying about is that, oh, women are not virgins these days, so they're not fit for marriage. So she's just a massive walking contradiction, in my opinion.
It's so this is a very weird argument that she makes there. That's some purity culture bullshit. That's straight out of conservatism. I know that I wasn't the first guy to be with my wife. And guess how much it really mattered to me? Absolutely none.
Nine,
It didn't matter to me
nine.
whatsoever. It was being with my wife is more about how she treats me. It's not about where she's been or who she's been with. Like, that's it. That's the. Oh, I'm trying not to be rude. That is a very poor argument for her to be making.
Right.
That is focusing so much on the physicality of it, of the physical nature of the person that you're dating, that you completely miss the human being that they are.
Well, and Steve, the argument they're making for this is, I got to remember the psychologist's name that ran the study, but the argument they make, this was one of Kevin Samuel's original arguments, is I think they polled like 1,000 women that divorced. And what they said that they found is that women that had a body count over 5 were more likely to divorce their husband. And the thing with that is, if you're going to be on that body count thing, bro, you can't be a man running through women left and right and expect a woman to say, I'm a virgin. If you want that, you need to do what you're saying you want as well. They use that argument because there's this whole thing they're arguing about, that when a man gets inside of a woman, that apparently she has a connection with him and it makes it harder for her to bond with the next man after. It's some kind of new study that came out in like 2018.
Oh man. So that is about as good as example of correlation does not equal causation that I've ever heard. You know what I mean? It's assuming that not sleeping around would make them happier. Like, she doesn't add that, does she? She doesn't make that assumption either. So that study, and I remember that study. I don't remember it well enough to quote from it, but they also didn't ask certain questions too. It's like, why are you unhappy? Why are you more likely to divorce your husbands? Where's the more information here? They just said it's more likely that they do divorce. It could be to any number of things. It could be those who are in religious relationships are less likely to divorce. I know that's a statistic that's real, but how likely is it that is true for the majority of the people? Because each population is different, each culture is different, right? If you come from a specific culture in the U.S., you are much less likely to divorce. Much less likely to divorce. So how much of that comes with the culture?
But the thing is, with that stat of not divorcing, is that that assumes that the marriage is happy. There are a lot of cultures, as you've stated, that don't divorce for shaming reasons, but it's an unhappy marriage. And so there's always an assumption that if you don't divorce, everything is fine. I'm like, that's not true. So,
well, arranged marriages have a less likelihood of divorce. That would be her argument would be, well, arranged marriages are better because you divorce less. Well, that has no bearing on whether or not the people are happy in the marriage.
Exactly. And
that none whatsoever.
Exactly. And people talk about the kids, but how about an abusive relationship where the kids are seeing their mums and dads being abusive towards each other? They may be in together, but for all intents and purposes, they should have split up, but because of cultural norms or shaming, they had to stay together. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You nailed it right on the head there, Wim. So I don't follow their arguments because a lot of the times they're easily dismissible once you ask a few questions.
Mhm. Stanley, you wanted to make a point earlier. I know we took so much time, but
Yeah, I've been was in the kitchen. Actually, I wrote down some points. So, I wanted to address. Let's see. I think it was Lou who brought up um, um, Pearlie basically, kind of trying to identify with normal people. And Steve makes the point. I think it was Steve who made the point that she's more or less a MAGA person. Which is basically conservative populism. Trump tries to do the same thing. He's a one percenter, but he kind of plucks, you know, issues that are fairly important to kind of the common man and tries to make hay with them. So if she's conservative, that kind of explains, her modus operandi. Um, I wanted to make a point about the fireman thing. Years ago in my first career, I was a distribution warehouse distribution manager, and I was running a receiving uh, department, and we unloaded containers, everything, all kinds of stuff. It was like Home Depot sort of products. And there were certain loads that were too heavy for my female workers to unload. Well, men and women working together, basically matching a job to a physical capability or a mental capability. I mean, that's a leadership issue. It's not so much a matter of men and women being equal as much as you're all in my department and I have to figure out how to get the job done by matching abilities to capabilities. So I don't see the big deal about, uh, um, if a fire truck is well managed, you don't send women to knock down doors. You send the people who are capable of doing it. So that's that point. And then I wanted to bring up the point about her wanting to curtail voting. That's a very conservative position as well, largely because there is a current running through at least farther right um, thinking that women tend to vote for Democrats more, just like certain minorities tend to vote for Democrats more. So limiting voting, and I live in Georgia, limiting voting is a tactic. So women shouldn't vote is right in line with that conservative thinking. If you want to control your politics, you limit who can vote for your politics. So that's pretty much it.
yeah, and I think if all women ceased voting in the US today, there's a very big chance that Republicans would just be carrying elections over after elections after elections. It's really, really possible. Um, but it's a dangerous situation having a monopoly where one political party has the monopoly on policy, on political power. It's really, really, really bad. That's why the other side is actually needed to provide that balance. So you have to negotiate. You have to look at it, take a 360 view of policies of whatever you're doing as a politician, rather than just these are the people I have to please. Every other person can just fuck off. So Mm, yeah, you
Well,
have a point.
I also want to add to your point. I do agree that there should be more than two political parties. I kind of wish we had more of at our founding, we had more of a parliamentary system, where, there are multiple parties, and there are reasons why we don't have that, which I won't get into. But more than two parties, uh, in my opinion, would work out better, but not everyone agrees with that.
To touch on something that Stanley said is the metrics that just Pearlie is using to make her justifications is problematic from one perspective specifically that I'm speaking to is that assuming that the physical metric is the only one that we're using is deeply flawed. Look at how many people look who are educators and nurses, right? Predominantly women. They saturate that market. Is educating our next generation something that shouldn't be looked at, shouldn't be judged into that conversation as well? She's making very, very wild um, connections between outcomes and causes. And for another thing, the majority of the people in some industries may be women, and we may rely on those exceptionally heavy. Women do take up a large portion of the production um, division. So we have in any given production company, you have a lot of females. We have a business here called Lifetime, and they make plastic tables and all sorts of different things. And at last I remember their head count was about a third of their workforce was female. That's not small. That's actually quite large. And there's not a whole lot of different industries that can boast those numbers. So her argument doesn't stand. I mean, it's floating on very, very thin ice, very, very thin ice. So there's another problem with her argument. So I would agree with Stanley that there's not just one metric that we should be measuring these conversations by. And I think Pearlie misses that.
Yeah, which brings me to the last point for this conversation, which is, do we think she really believes what she's saying? Do we think she's genuine? As in, it's possible that she actually believes what she's saying, but what is more likely? Is she just trolling people? Is she just, you know, what exactly do you think? Wolf, we'll go for Wolf, White Matters, Stanley, then Steve. What do you think she's doing really?
Well, I think it's half and half. I think half of it is an act that she realizes she can pander to get money from these men because a lot of men watch her and a lot of men donate to her channel. The other part of it, maybe there's some truth to what she's saying. And this is where the political stuff plays in. I don't agree with her approach towards how she handles women. And I think that's why a lot of women, tend to vote more for, as Stanley quoted, the Democratic liberal side, because I don't think the Republicans really fight for women's rights the same way the Democratic liberals do. And I think that's part of the problem. And I think what has happened is that she has found a niche, almost like putting a square perfectly inside of another square. And she knows as long as she can stay right there, she'll be comfortable. And like I said, I think she is exactly what she's speaking out against. She's just doing it right below the men's noses. And they don't realize it because they only care about using her to try to get more leverage over women.
Yeah, White Matters.
I see her as a liar, a fraud, or a grifter, however you want to call it. That's what I see her as. I mean, if you look at her content, I know people can change their viewpoints, but if you look at her content beforehand and you look at what she's doing now, I can't see where the light came and all of a sudden I've changed my viewpoints to this sort of stance. And one thing I will say about this, and this is just me, I don't believe a woman in her right mind would have viewpoints like this. I don't see it. For me personally, whenever I hear women say these things, I always have to side eye it because I don't see why would a woman want to curtail her own freedom. It makes no sense to me. So no, I see her completely as a fraud, an opportunist. It's a niche which she's got in, which she's realized it's very profitable, and yeah, that's how she's managed to secure herself. But I don't believe for one second that she truly believes what she's saying. there are some things which do make sense, but you gotta just ignore that because the rest of it is just bullshit.
Stanley.
Oh, sorry. Wolf, that was a very sophisticated argument you made about, basically Pearly being kind of coached along or tolerated because, she's basically a puppet. And look out for that argument because there's something one of these days offline. I'm gonna make a joke about Soul Bros.
All right, Steve.
Yeah. So I don't think she's lying. I think she's genuine about her beliefs. I tend to meet people where they're at, and if they're telling me something, it's much easier and I think a much wiser position to hold that what they're telling you is what they believe. To try and discriminate or to try and interpret what they're saying as something else other than what they're saying is much more difficult to me. So I think she's exactly who she says she is, and that means that she is a grifter. She doesn't have deep and meaningful arguments. Like Chloe said, she parrots people a lot. She parrots Thomas Sowell quite a bit. It's the same reason why I don't appreciate Candace Owens at all, is she's basically parroting everything that Thomas Sowell has said in every single one of his books. I don't find her intelligent. I find her quick-witted, and that's about it. But I think she is exactly who she says she is, and that's the problem, is she can't think any deeper than what she's been told and what she's read and arguments that other people have made. She's incapable of going further than that, because if she did, she would easily and very quickly discern that she is in a weak position, a weak argument. And so I
Such a
think
great
that
point.
she's exactly where she says she is.
Wow. And finally, we have Script Queen. Script Queen, we have missed you so much. So many months away. So the floor is yours. Anything you want
I
to
don't
talk
know
about?
about that, Charles. I don't mind being the prettiest one on the screen. So when Chloe's not here, I'm okay with it.
So I agree
Good to
with
see
a
you,
lot of the
Chloe.
stuff. Yeah, nice to talk to you guys. Oh no, I just felt like, oh well, this is a interesting one. I agree, as especially, yeah, she parrots a lot of arguments. I don't think that she has the capability of actually really researching things. I remember her videos of where, she was doing reacts to and then being red pilled, and even when she was trying to understand those things, she even understood that, like, when she was watching videos of Thomas Sowell, she didn't even really understand them properly, right? Like, and so she's just taking a lot of things at face value. And I think that she is very needy. So here's another aspect that I've noticed. And I think this is also kind of very obvious if you've ever watched a Brittany Venti video, but I think she's very desperate for validation and attention. And she's very lonely. And I think one reason why her target audience is Black men is because she actually is attracted to Black men. And so she understands very painfully that she is not the prettiest girl. And so she is literally trying to figure out an angle in which she can differentiate herself from all these really beautiful women, is by figuring out ways of tearing them down to say, like, hey, I'm on your side. Please pick me. I'll even let you cheat on me. Like,
Wow.
It's really sad if you kind of look at her content as a whole, because a lot of things that she asks other women on the show very boldly, she kind of really is very uncomfortable if it's asked of herself. But in other videos, she will admit very sheepishly, is like, yeah, like I would, like she would want to hook up with a guy, and he just didn't want to do it with her. Like, if he would have asked, he would have done it, but he just didn't even try. Or like her insecurities of, like, literally of her, dating a guy and being dumped by him, and then only for him to date and then be engaged to a woman that looks similar to her, but like prettier than her, like another redheaded girl, right? And I see her, one of her largest motivations of changing is the desperation of validation and attention, but like her painful understanding that she has to differentiate herself in other ways other than objective beauty.
Wow.
Do you think
That's-
she genuinely cares about men and men's mental health?
I don't think she really understands it. Like, I think that she understands certain things superficially, but like, I remember there was a clip of which she was mocking a guy for basically have been raped. He was raped, right? Like, he was drunk and he woke up with a woman on top of him. And then she was playing along with the other guys, of which, oh, that's bullshit, right? And so she just followed what the other men were saying. And so she just, I think she's just an extreme follower, and she follows like the crowd of people that she respects more, and she doesn't really have the ability to argue for a very nuanced exception or whatever. Like she had no argument to justify why male rape is bad if she also has a bunch of arguments of why women are also to blame for their own rape.
Yeah, that is so cringeworthy. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding your argument. What I'm hearing you say is that she cares about men only so long as those men match the type of man she has in mind that she's fighting for. If you don't fall into that category, then she doesn't consider you a man.
Yeah, I mean, like she doesn't. She wants a guy that is respected by other men.
Right, I understand that, but my question was more specific. Do you think she cares about men?
I don't know. And I guess in terms of what you mean by care, I think she wants a man. But does she care about men in general to the level that you're talking about? I don't know. But I think she definitely just wants one.
It's easy.
Yeah, it ain't hard. No, the reason why I ask you that question is because I think, you know, I like I said earlier, I can't assume intent, so I'm going to go based purely off of what they do and what they say, and it comes across to me like she does genuinely care about men and women, but her beliefs about them are very skewed, and so I think she meets blowback when she makes a comment that is not consistent with her statements. And I think that's what you're talking about, because she has made some statements where they're very controversial and they're very against some of the things that she argues for. So I think she does care. I just think she cares in a way that is not consistent with her beliefs.
Well, also, I think she also has in interviews previously, she's clearly stated that she wanted to make a brand. She didn't know what it was going to be, and I think this is her brand. So I think she cares about, in the moment, what is the most popular thing that her audience would want to hear. So she always sides with that argument. So I don't think it's necessarily that she cares for men. I think she cares that her audience hears something that they like to hear, whether or not it's good for them, or if it's consistently, like all of the arguments put together are, good for even men overall, let alone women, right? Like, so I think that I don't think she can understand the cognitive dissonance of all the things that she says stacked together, because she can only parrot kind of certain arguments and statements. So for her statement about like, I don't think women should vote, I truly think that she just said that just to get more attention, because obviously she is getting a lot of attention based off of that. And so she understands like, oh, I'm going to get a lot of attention, but she doesn't really know what to do with it, or like how to actually handle blowback. Like, she is copying people in the sense of being a troll, but she can't really fully commit to being a troll. So she's taking scripts from other people what to do, but she doesn't, like, I mean, if you look at even some of the interviews, you could tell she's very uncomfortable being confronted with her arguments and what she says, because she's not in front of people that can validate her and say, oh yeah, you go Pearl. That's a great take, and she doesn't have a room of people that are backing her up in those statements. It's just, if it's just her one-on-one, like with Ethan Klein, right? She's intensely uncomfortable.
Ethan destroyed her.
Yeah, that was fun to watch, I'll admit.
So, there was one point I wanted to make.
Let me just say that I agree with Chloe to a certain degree about what she's just said. I've come out of watching some of the things Pearly has done and came out with the same conclusion that you're making, Chloe. I just try not to, and I try not to get myself into the trap of trying to assume an intent, and trying to meet people exactly where they're at. So if this is what she says, then I'm going to assume that this is what she believes.
And to acknowledge Stanley's question about do you think black men are less choosy? I think she's genuinely attracted to black men. Like there was one guy that showed that she dated, and I'm like, oh, him. But I think she's genuinely attracted to black men. At least I'm not like, you know, that this isn't anything in relation to like, oh, like does she think less of them and therefore like they're a better option? I think she just, there's a reason why, you know, for some reason she's just picked black men as an audience, because I think that was that's the one story of the one who got away. If she keeps talking about that person, it's a black guy from like Chicago.
Well, I have to trust your judgment. I haven't watched her that much.
And she's really not the first woman to be making such statements. Like there's this other Samira Khan on Twitter who makes statements like this all the time, that women shouldn't vote and women should be in the kitchen and women should be doing all those stuff. And she's an ex-beauty queen, and I keep asking her why. You should take your advice, get off Twitter, go to the kitchen, go make some. And she's not married as well, so it's just it's crazy. It's crazy, but well, it's their life. They do whatever they want to do with it. It's none of my business, really. But these ideas are just crazy, and we have to knock them down a peg a bit. So that's the show for today. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate Wolf, Stanley, Steve, and Chloe. Chloe, we've missed you. I have missed you, and Steve too. So please, need you guys to be much more regular, so we can
Me
talk.
too.
So like, share, subscribe to the channel. My channel memberships are up. My Patreon is still there. So I'll see you in another live stream. It will be bye for now. So bye guys.